What's up? I'm Jacob Blitzo, your Elixir mentor. Okay, so this video is just going to be a lot of UI building. In our last video, we got our dynamic syntax highlighting working, and now we just want to polish up our Gist LiveView. So let's take a look at our designs to see what we're going to be diving into today. This is the page that we're going to be building out most of it today. Let's also just pull up our terminal and cd into our project. Mine is in Documents, Develop, Elixir Mentor, and then Elixir Gist. And let's make sure our Docker container is running. Mine is. If yours isn't, go ahead and start it. And then go ahead and start our project with mix space phx.server. And now if we go ahead and open up, if we go to localhost, let's see, localhost 4000, ignore the ugliness, we'll log in. We're really zoomed in too. All right, so my username is Jacob at Elixir Mentor, and then Elixir Mentor, enter. All right, and the ugliness, we're going to be fixing that, obviously. And one thing that we want to do really quick, let's navigate. I'm going to copy and paste an ID. We're going to navigate to our Gist page that we've been working on. And I just used a valid ID that's already in my database of a Gist that we entered in our last video, okay? So this is what we have. And if we look at our designs, this is what we want it to look like. So we need to add our username, which will be our email for now, the file name after it, and then the timestamp of created 4 days ago, and then the description of the gist here with our save or bookmark button. And then around our syntax that we did last time, we need to have our line numbers available next to it. And then in the header here, the file name, along with our delete, edit, and copy buttons. Okay, so that is what we're going to be building. And this is what we're starting with. So with that being said, let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. All right, so we got our project here. And now let's expand our lib directory and our Elixir Gist web. And then we want to go into our live directory, and we're going to be opening up our gist_live html.hex file. And right now, all we have is our syntax highlighting, which is this. So all we have is our gist that is, properly formatted. And we need to build this. So let's go ahead and start. We'll put our gradient in, and we'll start getting this information in as we go. And so back to Visual Studio Code, and let's go ahead and just above our gist that we already have there, we can just create a new div. And then inside this, we're going to add a class equal to, and we have our gradient already saved, and that is called em-gradient. And then we also want this to be, we want this to use a flexbox with a column layout. So we're going to do flex and then flex-column. And then we want our items centered and justified. So this will make them both horizontally and vertically centered. So items centered, and then justify, center. And then we're going to put some padding of 4 units. And then when I hit save here, and if we pull up Firefox, now we have our gradient up there. And then let's go ahead and just work our way down. Now we want to concentrate on, the name, the file name, this little corner, and our save button. So let's go back to our code, and inside this div, because we want it to be on top of the gradient, we can create another div. And this is going to have a class, a couple classes, and it's also going to be a flex box. And then we want to do justify between, which aligns children elements. So that'll be user profile and the action buttons. And the action buttons are the bookmark button. We're going to basically justify the space in between, which allows them to not be next to each other. And so we just will do justify between. And then we want the width to be the full width of the div that is inside. And then we're going to do some margin on the bottom of 10 and some padding on the x-axis of 4 units. And then if we save this, it'll realign. And now we want to do our profile section. So inside of this div, we are going to create our profile section. So create another div. And then the class here, the classes we're going to add, this is also going to be a flex box. And we want our items to be center. And then we want margin on the left of 10 units. And so this is going to be our profile image and then user information and file information after that. So now inside our div, let's go ahead and add an image tag. And the source of our image, we're just going to go to our images / user image. So we're going to just use the outline that we're already using for our drop-down menu for now. And that is this. So it's an image and then user-image.svg. And then the alt text, we can just put profile image. And then the class that we want is going to be round-image padding. And then we want the width of it to be 8 and the height to be 8. And then the margin on the bottom to be 6 units. And we already created the round image padding in our, let's see, let's just pull this up, not config, assets, CSS, and then the app.css. And we have our round image padding, and we use this on our drop-down menu. So it is applying the same thing to our profile image. And if we save this and go to our gist page, now you see our profile circle, and it looks just like this one because we are using the same CSS class. All right, cool. So we're cooking along here. To the right of this is where we're going to want our email and file name, right? So let's create another div. And the class here is going to be another flex box, and we want it to have columns. And we are going to want margin on the left of 4 units. And that is just going to move it off of that profile image. And the reason I know this is because I've tweaked and played around with this stuff already. Once we have that class created, we want to add our user email, and then we want to add the gist name. Okay. And we have access to all this stuff from our assigns state or map. And so what we're going to do now is inside of this flex box, we're going to create another div. And that class is going to use CSS classes of our font bold. And then our text, we want to use our the base size, for 16 pixels essentially. And then we want to use our lavender dark color. So our text color is going to be EM lavender dark. And that is just matching our designs. And then inside of this div is where we want to, we're going to use the Elixir's embedded expression, which is the less than %. And then in between these two things is where we'll add our user email. So we can access that by @current_user.email. And then on the other side of this, since we have that white text, that /, we don't want it to be lavender. So we're going to insert a span tag here. So span, and add our own classes to it. So we can now say we want our text to be white. And then we can close that opening span tag and then just put our / and then close our span tag. So now when we save it, if we look at Firefox, we have a white /. So we have our username. So Jacob at Elixir Mentor, and then /. And now we want the file name. And so we can use our embedded expression again here. And that is less than %equal. And now we have access to our gist object, and that is @gist and then .name. So now when we save this and go back to Firefox, we have a file name here, which would be, ideally, this would be like called validate.ex or something, right? So there we go. We have our file name showing up now. All right, and now underneath this, we're going to want to add our timestamp of when it was created. So let's go ahead and add that. And that is going to be in its own div as well. So we're going to do div, and then inside this, let's do a class. And we want our text to be set to large. And we want our text to be white. And we want our font to be bold. And then inside this tag, we can use our embedded Elixir expression, which is greater than %equal. And then we're going to do our @gist . For now, we're going to do updated at. And when I hit save here and we go back to, but you see a timestamp that's not very readable. And in a future video, we're going to add a dependency that can format this and say, this was created 4 days ago or 1 minute ago, and it will automatically take our timestamp and convert it for that. But for now, we're just going to have our timestamp placeholder there because we're just setting up this view, right? And then underneath this, we need our gist description. Okay, so now underneath our timestamp, we're going to add a p tag, which is for paragraph. It's for larger blocks of text, okay? And since our description could be decently long, we're going to use that. And now let's go ahead and just set some CSS classes here. And we want our text to align to the left. And we want our text to be small, which is 14 pixels. And we want our text to be white. And then we want our font to just be our brand font. And then inside of our p tag, we can do the embedded. So less than %equal, and we can do @gist, which grabs our gist out of our assigns map. And then we want the description. And then when we save that and go to Firefox again, I broke something. Where's our terminal? Do I have a typo? We sure do. Description. Okay, save that. And now, there we go. So now our description is underneath. And if we compare this to our designs, other than it saying, so many days ago, I would say, this is looking pretty good. Our description, we could probably move it a little closer to the profile picture, but for the most part, I would say this is looking really good. So let's go ahead and continue with our HTML. We want to add our save button, which we have to do a couple things here. We're going to create a button with a border around it. We have a button here, which is save, right? And then we're adding an image to it. And we only have the left side rounded, and then the right side is not rounded. And then we're going to create another div here and have a border there with a counter in there with the right side rounded and not the left. So it gives it a look of one single button, but it's really just a button and a div with a border. So that's what we need to make. And now that I'm thinking about it, we need to import our assets. So we have our bookmark and all of that. So if we go ahead and expand our private directory, our static, and then go into, so we have images here. And right now we only have these. And I am going to open up our Gist assets. And I will have a link to download this directory in the description. But we need to add our edit, our delete, copy, comment, bookmark outline, and bookmark filled SVGs. And go ahead and just drag those into the image directory. And now we'll have access to all those. And that is done. And now we can continue on our merry way and get that button created. So when we go outside, we want to be inside of this div, the justify between div. So directly underneath here, this is where we want to start. So create a div here. And this class is going to be equal to, we want to use flexbox, and we want our items to be center. And then we want a margin on the right side of 10 units. And then inside of this is where we need to create our button. And our button is going to use some CSS classes as well. And we're going to use a flex box. And then our items need to be center. And our background needs to be our EM purple. Then we're going to also have a hover, and the background color is going to change to EM purple dark. And then we want our border white and our border to be 1 pixel. And we can do that in square brackets, 1px. And we want our text to be white as well. And then we want the height of this button to be 8 units. And then we want our font to be bold. And we want padding on our Y of 2 units and padding on our X of 2 units. And then we want it rounded on just the left side, and we want a medium round. And then if we save that and go to Firefox, you can see the beginning of our button, and hover makes it dark. So this is awesome. Now all we want to do is add our text of save and an image. So if we go back to our code, in between these 2 button tags, we can add our image. So we've done this before, and our source is now images, and then it is bookmark outline.svg, and our alt text can just be called our save button. We can go ahead and close this image tag with just like that. And now we can add our text right here. So our save button text will be right next to the image, the bookmark outline. So when we go there, now we have our button. So that's pretty cool. Now all we have to do is add a div on the right side here with a counter, so we know how many times this gist has been saved. Enjoying the video? Show some love with a like and hit subscribe to stay updated. To support me and keep the content free, click join for memberships or pick up a course at elixirmentor.com and get free access to my private community. Let's jump back in. Let's go back into Visual Studio, and underneath our button tag, create another div. And the classes the CSS classes we're going to want to use, this is going to be a flex box as well. Items are going to be center, and our background is going to be transparent because we want it to be transparent like our designs. So it's matching our gradient background, not the light purple. So that's transparent, and we want our text to be white. And then we want our font to be our brand font and our height to be 8, so it matches our button. And then we want rounded corners on the right side to be a medium round. And then we want our border to be white, and we want our border to be 1 pixel. So inside square brackets, we can pick 1 pixel, and then some padding on the x-axis of 3 units. And then inside this div, we're going to just have a placeholder of 0, and that will be dynamic in a very future, not a very future, but a future video. Now, if we save that and go back to Firefox, you'll see our save button is done. So that's really cool. We have our gradient, we have our file information, we have our save button here, and now we need to move on, and work on our little gist frame, which is this little header with these buttons and the title of our file, and then our gist code inside with our numbers to the left. So let's get going. We want to go outside of this all these divs now. So outside of our gradient div. Okay. So we're going to go underneath that. Now we want to create another div. All we do is create divs. And then the CSS classes we're going to use, we want to use justify center. And we want padding on the x-axis of 28 units, width, and then we want to be the full width, and then we want some margin off the bottom of 10 units. And then inside of this is where we're going to create our little header. So inside, let's create another div, and the CSS classes to use. We're going to do a flex box with padding to the items inside. We want to be center on the X and Y axis. So we're going to use justify center as well. Justify is the Y. And then our background is going to be EM dark. And then we want our rounded, just the top side. So if we go back to our designs, this border is only rounded on the top, and then the bottom is squared because that's going into our little gist window. So we want this rounded on, so we're going to do rounded dash just T for top and a medium bend, and we want a border. Save that. And now if we go to Firefox, there we go. We have our header created. So we're coming along. Whoops, I don't want to save it. All right, and let's continue with this. And now inside of this header is where we want our file name and then our save and delete buttons. So we're going to create a div inside this. And inside this, the CSS class is used. We want the width to be 300 pixels. And then we want padding on the left side of 2 units. We want the font to be our brand font, and we want our font to be bold, and we want our text to be base, which is 16 pixels. And then we want our text to be our EM lavender dark color. Inside this div, we are going to use the embedded Elixir, which is less than %equal. And then we want our gist name here. So we're accessing gist through our assigns map. And then when we save it and go back and look at our code, so now we have a file name here. And obviously we want this to the left more. To do that, we're going to create another div to go underneath it that is going to be all of our buttons, and that should push this over to the left. And if not, we'll make some adjustments. Underneath our gist name, create a div for all of our buttons that we're going to add. So div, and then we don't need anything. We're just separating them so they're grouped together, and we can just use an empty div tag for that. And now we're going to create a button. So create a button tag, and the CSS classes we're going to use, we want padding on the X of 1 unit, and we want to set up the type of button to be a button, and then we're going to have a PHX click action here. And for now, we're just going to set it to empty curly braces. And then inside, we want an image tag. And the source of this image is going to be /images/delete.svg. And then the alternate text for this, we'll just call this the delete button. And when we save this and go back to Firefox, now you see that we have our delete button. So going back to our code, let's go ahead and copy this button tag, and we're going to paste it once and twice underneath. And now all we have to do is change the delete to edit, and then call it the edit button. And then we're going to call this one the copy SVG and the copy button. And now when we go back, now we have our copy and delete, all of that good stuff, which is really cool. And we need to correct some stuff here. Let's move our syntax here. So underneath our buttons, so not this div, so just one outside of the closing tag there, that's where we're going to move our highlight.js stuff. And when we go back, there we go. Oh, I see. We accidentally did justify center. So looking at this, see how everything's kind of centered here? We want to use the justify between, so it does what it did up here with our save button and our user and file information. But we want justify between here. And so now our top little banner, there we go. Now our file name is left adjusted and our buttons are on the right. So this is looking really cool. All we have to do now is add our line count and a border around our text here. So around, I'm going to just move this again. I shouldn't have brought it up because it's just going to confuse us. I'm just going to put it below again. And then so up here above the last div, we're going to create another div. And we're going to give this an ID here and call it the gist wrapper. The class, the CSS classes, it's going to be a flex box and the width is going to be full width. And then inside of this div, we want to have a text area of line numbers. So text area, we don't need a name, but we do have to give it an ID because our ID is required for anytime we use a hook, remember? So you need an ID. So line dash numbers. Now we're calling it the same thing we did on our create gist page because we're actually going to refactor our hook a little bit so we can use the same line number code on this page as we did on the create gist page. So we're going to be doing that in the next video, or yeah, probably the next video, but we're going to be preparing for that by using this ID. And then the CSS classes we're going to use here. First, we're going to have rounded bottom left medium. So rounded bottom left, the medium bend, delete these columns and rows. That was just an autofill. And then go ahead and make this read only because we don't want this text area to be editable by anyone because we're filling it in with our JavaScript hook. If we save this and go back to Firefox, you're going to see our background is white. And we don't want that. And we also can't have it our normal dark color because we need to have it match the background of our highlight.js syntax here. And so we're going to just have to create a custom CSS class here. And let's just do that below. So we have our text area and line numbers. Let's go ahead and underneath those, we're going to create one called syntax area in opening and closing brackets. And then we're going to do add apply, and our background syntax color, we need to actually create that. And we do that in our Tailwind config file. So if we go and open up Tailwind config, we have all of our colors here. We can just go ahead inside this color, inside this colors curly brace, we're going to call this EM syntax. And the color of that background is going to be 0E111, 3 ones and a 6. And then go ahead and just put a comma here. And so this color is now going to match the background of our this, okay? So let's go back into our app.css. And now let's create our syntax area. And we want our background to be that syntax, that EM syntax color that we just added now. All right. And then we want it to have a border. We want the text to be extra small, and we want the border to be white, and the height needs to be auto. So it's going to adjust depending on how much text is there, right? We want our border top to be none because we have our header there. And then we want our border left. This is going to be where our main code is. And we want the border left to be none as well. And then let's go ahead and make our syntax numbers. So that is going to be at apply. We want a border, our border to be white, our font to be our brand font, and padding on our Y, we want 28 pixels. And this is to bring the numbers down because the syntax that we get back from Highlight.js is shifted a little bit. So we want our P padding on our Y to come down 28 pixels and our text to be extra small. And then we also want our text to be our EM dark, our EM dark light color, which is our gray. And then we want the background to be our EM syntax color. We just added again, and the height to be auto. So it's going to adjust with however many line numbers is there, right? And then our width, we want to be 54 pixels. And this was just kind of figured out for having, thousands of lines and how much space we need. And our text, we want aligned to the right. And then overflow, we want hidden. And then resize, none. And a lot of this, we're just copying from our line number stuff up here. And we're just reusing it because we needed slightly different things. And then our border on the right is going to be none because we have our code block there. And we're just going to have our border on the left side. And then our border on the top is none because we have the header, okay? So none. And then we're almost done here. We just need to do our syntax numbers focus because we don't want it to be highlighted blue when it's selected. So we just want to make sure we say we want our focus outline none, apply, needs an A. So we want our focus outline none, and then we want our focus border to be white, so it's not blue, and then our focus ring to be 0, so we don't see it. So now if we go back to our Firefox, the background's going to match. This is going to be smaller. And now when we go back to our code here, and basically where we added our rounded bottom left, we can just now add our syntax numbers class, and hit save, and our background should blend in. Syntax numbers, our line numbers, read only, syntax numbers. Let's make sure everything. Save this. I think I forgot to save it. We want our border white, font brand PY, yes. Syntax numbers. Oh, we need, maybe this is doing it, that space. Okay, save it. Oh, syntax numbers for the focus. That's why that wasn't working. Okay, so now that we have all these custom classes, and they're basically the same as our text area and line numbers classes that we've done in the past, but we're making the background match the syntax color that's returned from Highlight.js. So now we can jump back over. If we go back to our line numbers thing, line numbers div here, and go ahead and just put our syntax numbers class. and save it. And now we should see, there we go. That background will match our highlight.js background. And now all we have to do is add our highlight.js here with a border around it. And we're pretty much done with the UI here, minus the comments, which is really sweet, right? So let's go ahead and go back to our code. So underneath our line numbers text area, let's go ahead and copy and paste our highlight div that we already have right here and put that right up here. Paste and then save it. And then one thing that we're going to want to add to the class here is not our white background. We're going to want to call our syntax area class that we just made. And we want the width to be full width. And we want rounded bottom right with the medium curve. And then if we save that and go back to Firefox, and now there we go. We have our created gist syntax highlighting. Now we don't have our number lines working yet, but we have the text area there to work with it. And we also have to adjust our date format. And then we have to hook up our delete, edit, copy buttons and our save buttons, but our UI is done. And this is looking pretty freaking awesome. We came a long way with our UI today. Our project is looking better and better. In the next couple videos, we are going to get our line numbers working next to our code, get the copy, delete, and edit buttons working as well. Then once those are done, we can add our comments, and that'll be exciting. So as always, if you need help or want to check out the solutions, check out the GitHub link in the description. Join my Discord server, Elixir Mentor, if you have questions or just want to hang out and chat. That link is in the description as well. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready, full-stack, and REST API solutions, hit that subscribe button now. I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir Mentor. See you in the next video.